From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Here's what's ahead. The weekly grain market segment with K-State's Dan O'Brien. He'll talk about the wheat market's response to this week's Kansas Wheat Tour. And he'll discuss the market's overall reactiveness to new crop planting progress here in the U.S. Also today, K-State's Terry Griffin is joined by agricultural engineer Cory Friedli, who recently graduated from K-State's Masters in Agribusiness distance education program. He'll talk about the benefits of that experience, which included a detailed economic analysis that he ran for his family farm's crop production enterprises in central Kansas. And we'll hear from K-State's Chip Redmond on the Kansas agricultural weather outlook. All that straight ahead on this Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and it's good to have you aboard once more as we offer up our Friday edition beginning on the grain markets. Standing by with his weekly comments, Dan O'Brien, grain market economist, K-State Research and Extension, from his office in Colby, northwest Kansas. Dan, the 2022 Hard Winter Wheat Tour of Kansas and neighboring states wrapped up yesterday, hosted by the Wheat Quality Council, of course, and it affirmed what everybody largely expected, a substandard crop here in Kansas. The markets may have already absorbed that perspective on the crop, but nonetheless, the tour results garnered their due attention.
Yes. In essence, the Kansas Wheat Tour came up with an estimate of the Kansas wheat crop at 261 million bushels, down from what the USDA had said at 271. Still at risk a bit to getting to the finish line. And we're at the point where, for the sake of grain markets to be stable, we hope it finishes well, really. Right. And the yields of 39.7 bushels per acre. Again, that compares to the USDA's projection of 39. What I found interesting in the Kansas Wheat Tour numbers was the estimate of abandonment. Right. The Wheat Tour estimated about 11% of acres abandoned, whereas the USDA's estimate was 6%. And in looking at Wheat Tour numbers in the past, if there's any place that either comes in great or not so great, it's not the planted acres. We have a pretty good idea of planted acres. It's what actually comes out of the harvested acre side. So I think probably pretty well understood, pretty well expected that we'll have a wheat yield of under 40 bushels per acre in Kansas. But the big issue will be how many acres are we able to harvest, and how many acres will be abandoned or declared failed. With the moisture we've had and the high prices, you certainly have the incentive to go out and harvest what you've got. It's we show cash prices across the state for wheat. Yesterday, Colby 1209, 1280 in Salina, 1270 Topeka, 1250 Garden City, 1280 Hutchinson, 1205 in Columbus. So $12 wheat gives every incentive to go out and harvest it. Also interesting to see that out of that report, Romulo in our shop giving comments about how they didn't see a lot of disease pressure, didn't see a lot of insect pressure. Still, in driving out western Kansas yesterday, I saw planes up in the air. So with this much of a high price, it could be that people are spraying just to make sure that they don't have some issue later on. I didn't see a lot, but you sure have the economic incentive to try to preserve what this crop can be. And literally from a U.S. and world food perspective to try to make sure we bring as much of this thing in as we can. Absolutely. Any way you slice it, we are in uncharted territory as wheat prices go. We'll also want to add in the Nebraska numbers also were looked at. Estimate of 36.9 million bushels, down from 41 last year. Colorado estimated at, the USDA estimated at, as I understand it, about 49.6 million bushels. The Colorado wheat representative came in and said that it's more like 40 million bushels. So that's interesting and important. The Oklahoma number we've talked about before, estimated 60 million bushels, down from 115 last year. And of course, the Texas crop is also well known to be in tough shape, and a lot of we hear a lot of market discussion about failed acres coming out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, quite the situation. It's interesting that the International Grains Council also weighing in on this. They have come out and cut their world wheat production forecast by 11 million tons down to 769 million. And they're indicating that the reason for those cuts are lower crop in the United States. Basically, they're following the USDA, again, 1.719 billion versus their previous estimate of 1.83, and also a significant cut in the crop in India too, which has made news, of course, in the world export markets. So, since we're talking about wheat, when we look at corn and we look at soybeans, you can build the argument that for soybeans, we've been trading within a range that happened from March 7th to March 8th, from a range of on the high side 1750 to about 1560. And even the gyrations that have happened of late, 60, 70 cent moves based on whatever, still within that range. For corn, we have moved to the higher side out of the March 7th, 8th range, but have been trading since about early mid-April, range of about 760 to about 825, just chugging along within that, even these recent moves. But for wheat, that's a different story. We've left that March 7th, 8th range behind, and that was at basically $10 to $12.50, and we've been trading here in the last 3 or 4 days from, in essence, about $12.90 up to $13.75. So concerns for sure in the world wheat market and challenging supply-demand fundamentals. We do hear reports also that could affect wheat of, as we already talked about, hot dry spell affecting prospects, causing fears in India about continuing their exports. Again, that's in the news in terms of what they're going to honor and what not. And also reports now of pretty hot weather in France. And France, amongst the wheat-growing countries in the European Union, is often important, wheat and corn and these other crops too. So it just seems, Eric, that in some years when we worry about this or that happening in these markets, most of the time those fears are unfounded, et cetera. But this year when we're seeing fears about the crop falling short or something happening, that we're just on the other side of the coin.
And this brings a whole new level of attention to planting progress. You hinted at that. And on the wheat side, is the spring wheat crop going to get in sufficiently in the northern plains? They're too wet. Corn planting is coming along well, by and large, in the Corn Belt itself. But with these kinds of prices, this kind of volatility in the markets, there's a great focus on that progress.
Well, and you have in our written notes here today the USDA crop progress report. These numbers came out on Monday, earlier in the week. On May 15th, we were 39% of the way planted for the U.S. spring wheat crop, and normally we're at 67% of the way there. And for wheat emerged, we're at 16%. Normally we're at 30%. So that's a challenge. For corn planting, we're normally, again, at about 67% of the way planted. We're at 49%, and not quite as dire as for spring wheat. And again, the crops where you see most of the concern, the areas of the country would be, again, up in those northern states, et cetera. Although you look at corn emerged and corn planted up in North Dakota, it doesn't look too bad. So let's hope what's planted is successful, doesn't have a problem. We have some fears, and perhaps our own climatologist this week talked about what low temperatures we might be dealing with and whether they're threats or not. So we have that news in our neck of the woods in Brazil, and they have dry conditions and fears of low temperature impacts. So we're watching, of course, our backyard and theirs as well, just because of the importance of all these factors coming in and affecting crop supply demand and holding prices to the highs that they are.
Do want to spend a moment here on a definite positive in the trades, Dan, and that is on the soybean side, we are selling beans on the world market at a very encouraging pace right now.
Yes. For the last week, we had a report, basically May the 5th. We were just about equal to the pace in terms of actual shipments that we needed to meet the USDA's projections. Well, now again, during the prime time for what ought to be Brazil's dominance of these sales markets, we had a week where we sold 35 million bushels for the week ending May the 12th. Need about 23 to meet the USDA's projection. So the cash sales, shipment pace doing decently, but what really has one's attention is the forward sales, about 2.175 billion bushels, and the USDA's projection is about 2.14, and we're only about 70% of the way through the marketing year. So what that says, if we keep up that pace, that will tighten down the old crop balance sheet for soybeans, tighten things up as we head off into the latter part of the summer, cash prices up all that much more, and then wonder where we're going. The market, as of now, for that next marketing year, starting September 1, 418 million bushels sold out of the USDA's projection of 2.2. So we're basically 19, almost 20% of the way sold on that crop too. And the major players are the same ones, China and a few others really coming in strong, buying ahead. It really kind of raises a conundrum. You know, our good friend and colleague, Guy Allen, and I have been debating back and forth. Guy, with his in-country experiences in China, has really been wondering about how strong soybean demand in China will remain, given their adjustments in their swine herd and their diets, et cetera. And the numbers don't lie in that if China's cutting back in its grain use, particularly soybeans, it doesn't show it by its export purchases. It's, I think, over 50% of old crop purchases are still ahead from China, and that and more when you look into the new crop. So that's good news for the soybean market that China isn't backing down, at least not yet.
Right. Well, Dan has much more on the markets and the recent price action that we've seen in his weekly notes on the trades at agmanager.info. Dan, thank you, and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, Eric. Take care.
On the grain markets, Dan O'Brien, grain market economist, K-State Research and Extension. We'll return with more for you shortly here on Agriculture Today. Agriculture Today is back now, and on this segment, we want to put into the spotlight once again an important educational program out of Kansas State University that has met with immense success over the recent years. It's the Distance Learning Masters in Agribusiness program out of Agricultural Economics here at K-State. We have with us precision agricultural economist, K-State Research and Extension, Terry Griffin, and one of the participants in the most recent class that just graduated with his master's in agribusiness, a native of central Kansas from a farm there and now working for John Deere. His name is Cory Friedli. Before we get your story, Cory, we want to have Terry remind us about this program and what it offers in the way of distance education. Been a great run with it, hasn't it?
It has. It's been really beneficial for me, too, because the students we have in it are not traditional students. They are actively working in industry. You know, we've had people with PhDs and doctors of veterinary medicine come through the program. We've had engineers at AGCO and Deere come to the program after 10, 15, 20 years in the workforce. So they bring a lot of experience that I gain from getting insights into their world. The program is mostly distance or some events that are on campus, maybe during our spring break or the week in January before classes start, where the cohort comes in for intensive coursework. And a lot of the coursework is distance. They do it on their own. We've had some of the largest farm operations in Kansas be members of this. We've had typically normal-sized farms, family members in Iowa come to the program. Lots of really good stories there.
And one of those stories we want to share, that of Cory's today, who hails from near Hope, Kansas, which is in Dickinson County, right, Cory?
Yeah, that's correct, Eric. Glad to be with you here today, I guess, first of all. But, I grew up on a farm around Hope, Kansas there, and decided to pursue a degree in ag engineering from Kansas State I graduated in May of 2009. And then from there, continued my career, got hired by John Deere, and have been in various roles within the company, but primarily in product development engineering on self-propelled forage harvesters and recently the X9 combine. And today I work as a product marketing manager for combines up in the Moline, Illinois area.
So you're based there, however, you still have interests back on the farm.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, I say we, me and my family, we travel back very regularly during the peak seasons here, planting, harvest, hay season, and pretty involved in the operation with my dad and uncle, who also both have full-time jobs. So it's everything we do is after hours for the most part, unless we're taking vacation. So it's pretty intense. It's about an 8-hour drive to get back here and get back on the farm and get back in the real world on agriculture.
Then what interested you in following through on this master's in agribusiness experience?
Yeah, I had two main objectives that sent me down the master's in agribusiness program. The first one was to, continue developing myself for my future career at Deere and just gain some more experience on the finance side of the business and in ag marketing, risk management, and things like that for Deere as well. But then also as we look to the future of our Friedli family farms, how do we grow our operation and how do we do that profitably? And the Masters in Agribusiness program teaches you various skill sets that help you think through, how to do that. And so really those were the two objectives, was to gain some additional experience for future opportunities at John Deere and then to also, have some more financial experience for our farm operation.
To that latter end, talk a moment about your studies here. You ran a pretty thorough analysis of the cropping enterprises on the family farm, right?
Yes, that's correct. My thesis that I did for graduation was a 5-year profitability analysis and future growth analysis for Friedli farms. Basically, I went back 5 years and looked at all of our scale tickets, our acres planted, planting dates, harvest dates, and things like that, and ran some significant analysis on profitability, time it took us to cover those acres, and that was what my thesis was about. So we went from very few digital records on our farm to a complete understanding of an acre-by-acre cost of what it takes us to produce an acre of wheat or sorghum or corn or soybeans.
What did you uncover in that was surprising to you or of greatest interest then?
Well, to no surprise to anybody, wheat's been pretty tough over the last 5 years with the prices. So, yeah, wheat's kind of been a struggle for us on our farm specifically. Soybeans have been, fairly profitable across the last 5 years. Sorghum's been pretty decent. And then from a machinery standpoint, one of the reasons I worked with Dr. Terry Griffin here was to analyze, machinery productivity and can we cover the acres that we have today with the machines that we have and compare that to what we would want to do in the future and how does that operation look. And so we found that, through the programming model that we developed, that we are timely in harvest and in planting, and at some point down the road here that we would need to make some updates to that. But for the foreseeable future and next few years, we're in a good shape.
It gave you an insight into what would have to happen if, in fact, you wanted to grow the operation in acreage or otherwise.
Yeah, that's correct. Down the road, if we wanted to grow sizably, we would need to invest in a planter was, I think, the first limitation. The longer you go in the planting season, the less yield you get, and, you want to be timely as much as possible. And so that was probably the biggest one that we discovered from a machinery standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Cory, you have the Masters all tucked away now, so how do you hope to move forward then with this in pocket?
Yeah, graduated last week. Several of my classmates and I were in town here in Manhattan to participate in that event. And so moving forward, I mentioned it earlier, hopefully, down the road here at John Deere, having that master's in ag business will enable me to move on in my career, to take on more responsibility and, lead the company in different ways. And then on our farm, we learned a lot of things about ag management and finance management and things like that in the program, and really just to how to analyze investments and determine if you're going to be profitable in the future versus after the fact. So those are the two things I see the Masters in Agribusiness program doing for me.
And if you were to encounter somebody who was perhaps preliminarily interested in this program, what would you share with them?
I'd share with them that it's a great program to be involved with, and that, for a mid-career professional or anybody, 3-4 years of experience, it's a great learning experience. You develop a solid network of friends from around the world, really. In our class, we had 16, and from all over the country. We had folks from Washington, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and so you really get kind of a broad base there of network built with some colleagues. And then, from a career perspective, if you're working, the program has tremendous flexibility. So they understand that life comes first and that the program, is a part of your life and that it's not all of what you have going on. Myself, I have a wife, Kimberly, and a son, Chandler, and daughter, Braylon, and there's a lot of things that come up during the year, and they're more than flexible and help you get through the program and really guide you along the way. So I can't be more thankful than I am for the program support throughout the time in the program.
Very well. Terry, how one might become involved with or at least inquire about the Masters in Agribusiness distance program?
Well, it's pretty easy to find on a Google search. In K-State, MAB, Masters of Agribusiness. Deborah Cole is our primary contact in our department, and she'd love to have a conversation with anyone. If you're at any of the major farm shows, Commodity Classic, or really anything you can think of, there's probably going to be an MAB booth there. Deborah and Mary Bowen would probably be on site to talk to alumni and also to recruit new members. Cory mentioned that had some support from his family, and the program was understanding of that. He graduated on time. He's in the cohort of 2022, and not everybody graduates on time. I've had several students who waited a long time. One student was class of 2017, I believe, and I've been working with him before he was married. Today he has 2 kids. Bought a farm, cleared the farm, added irrigation. Just lots of things came about. But the reason I'm telling you this, back in the fall, I had a conversation with him. He says, I don't know if it's going to be this year or not. I'm making some progress, but I said, well, that's fine. I'm going to be working with Cory this spring. He said, Cory Friedli? I said, yeah. He's going to graduate? I said, yeah. And he's probably going to beat you. Be done. And Kevin said, challenge accepted.
Yeah.
And so they both defended on the same day. I think Cory's been that far along, and they were classmates as undergrads, so they graduated with their BS at the same time to finish. And he's an engineer as well, so it was really nice seeing 2 engineers do their thing.
But it illustrates, again, the flexibility of the program and the
very
accommodating nature of it.
Yep.
Very good. You can go to the Agricultural Economics website out of K-State, and you can find the information directly right there, or simply, as Terry says, search for K-State Masters in Agribusiness program online. That'll take you there likewise. Well, Cory, congratulations on finishing it up, and the best to you in your future endeavors. We appreciate you coming by.
Yes, thank you, Eric.
Terry, thank you, as always.
Always a pleasure, Eric.
Along with Terry Griffin, precision agricultural engineer at K-State, Cory Friedli. Cory, a new graduate of the Masters in Agribusiness program out of K-State's Agricultural Economics Department. Cory from a family farm near Hope in Dickinson County, central Kansas. And we'll be back with more on Agriculture Today. This Agriculture Today closes out on Kansas agricultural weather. Our regular Friday guest is along via phone, Chip Redmond, meteorologist with K-State Research and Extension. Chip, a quick rainfall recap for the past several days, if you might. There were some storms about. Where and how much moisture?
Yes, over the last week, some areas that really needed moisture got it, especially Southwest this week got up to from a half to an inch of rain, depending on where you're at. The only real dry spots remain is that over the last 7 days is the Northwest. They continue to miss out on moisture. And then the far, far, far Southwest in Morton County there, they've also not gotten a whole lot of moisture. But when we look at 30-day departures, despite that moisture, we still have pretty substantial deficits in the Southwest with up to 2 inch below average precipitation. So, we have had rain. It's been heavy in places, especially in portions of southeast Kansas, but we still have lingering negative departures across a lot of central and western Kansas.
Then the drought monitor may have shown improvement here and there, but broadly speaking, we still have some trouble spots.
Yeah, actually, there was no improvement this week on the drought monitor. That's just because where the heaviest rains did fall, they were really isolated. They weren't widespread enough to help relieve conditions. And honestly, this week's moisture kind of met average in most locations for the week. We did have drought expansion this week, fairly substantial drought expansion. We saw exceptional drought expand in the far southwest, as well as extreme drought grow in both the northwest, southwest, and central parts of the state. So a big expansion this week in the drought monitor.
And the heat that we've seen yet the past several days with some short interruptions there, well, that's just adding to the drought concerns.
Yeah, we had such a cool start to the year, and then we've really flipped that switch. In fact, just pulled up some numbers here. We've broken over 50 daily maximum high temperature records so far in May, and we've broken over 130 minimum temperatures. So let's say overnight we average a temperature in the 50s. This time of year, we were staying in the 70s at night, breaking the low temperature. So it's been really, really warm. That doesn't help with moisture concerns because it helps deplete moisture quicker out of the soil. But it's actually needed because we were starting to get behind on growing degree days, especially with the growing season. So warmer temperatures finally invigorating growth across the state.
Yeah, just a caveat to that, those high night temperatures and accompanying humidity, not very helpful for our livestock, but not a good start to the summer anyway.
Yeah, they need those cool overnights to recover, especially since they're not really adjusted to the warmer temperatures that we've had. So increased cattle stress, definitely.
Well, Chip, we seem to now be in a routine where we see these regular disturbances push through Kansas and spawning storms here and there. As we look at the outlook, is more of that on the burner here?
Yeah, so this weekend looks mostly dry for a lot of the state. We have a big system coming in. It's going to cool temperatures down for the weekend, but then another system coming in early next week that'll bring widespread moisture is forecasted right now for much of the state, which should be at least average for the week rainfall. After that, we definitely get back into a much warmer pattern to finish out the month and drier pattern, unfortunately, with potential for excessive heat and definitely increased water demand. As you look past that, the new outlooks for June just came out. Above normal temperatures is favored, as well as below normal precipitation statewide. So they had some boosts here, but overall the dryness and warm temperatures expected to continue through June and through most of the summer.
Well, buckle in, folks. That's where we're headed. And Chip, thank you for taking a few moments out of your travels to visit with us, and we will catch up with you again next week.
Thank you.
He oversees the Mesonet out of the K-State Weather Data Library. That's Chip Redmond, meteorologist with K-State Research and Extension, bringing our Friday edition to a close. Thanks to you for being along with us, and enjoy your weekend. Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.